When you hear the word conservative, what comes to mind? Racist, bigot? Okay, yeah. How rich? How original? I think that's what the media would have you believe. If you're out there and you're not familiar with what a conservative is, listen up. When you're talking about a conservative is a person who belongs to a political faction that if you were to actually uproot them to put them into any political space or political organism, they would act as a part of a class that serves the function of putting the brakes on a train that has no brakes. That's it. Throughout time, space, reality, conservatives are the brakes to a train that has no brakes. That is it.
Oh my God! Oh,
from a longitudinal perspective, yes, always think French Revolution if nothing else. Ask who were the people that pushed back against the pressures of industrialization brought about by liberalism, socialism, nationalism? Who within society takes a resistant posture when they see progressive ideas spearhead society towards a cliff? When ideologies nest on a progressive dial and the dial is headed towards a utopia, there will always be an ideology that will shout, hey, your utopia is paving the road to hell. Who were the people who stood in defiance to anything that embattled social order? Who tried to rein in the craziness of an ism, nationalism, socialism, liberalism, especially when those things showed signs of having recessive results? These people are called conservative, or they're also accused of being conservative, which is interesting, right? Because from that perspective, you can almost suggest that conservatism isn't an ideology, it's an attitude. But can it be both? What makes conservatism an ideology? We can find out together, but not before this introduction right here. There can be no utility in a conversation about conservatism from an ideological or political perspective before addressing cultural conservatism and how it operates in our reality today. If we understand cultural conservatism, the ideological and economic ideas come next. We're going to crawl before we walk here. So this content is really intended to just establish that cultural conservatism in 2024 is the way you describe a demographic of people who are the brakes to a train that has no brakes. That's it. Put the knife in the goose is cooked, the rabbit has been boiled. This content is just intended to help you understand that in any healthy socio-political environment, there must be a display of something called political dynamism. And if you're not familiar with what that is, we can talk about it real quick. Political dynamism is what a healthy social organism must have. You have to have a progressive accelerator class, and you have to have the brakes to that accelerating system. And then ideologies in between, they have a function as well. If you pick them all up, this is political dynamism. Today, to the heart of millions, conservatism that strives to be the brakes on a train has no real place in society anymore. I do honestly feel like conservatives have become witchers. Either they're putting themselves out of business, or there's just no space in society anymore. And I have a theory to why that is. If we observe what's happened to the West, government has effectively taught Americans to associate the brakes on a train to racism or a threat to their democracy, and it's been effective. For this reason, Americans grow state, they grow the establishment, they grow government. By associating the brakes on a train to white supremacy, arms of the government, including much of America's school systems, are in the process of teaching Americans to give up or assault their own First or Second Amendment rights. This does mean that today Americans are asking for two different forms of government and two different constitutions that exercise different restraints. Unfortunately, we have become a constitutional republic where inside we are now two countries, because political dynamism, where there should be brakes to a train system, it's not existing, it's not functioning the way it's supposed to function, because the state has taught people to attack the brakes on a train. Here's my theory. If conservatives will not be able to be the brakes on a train, then if you're a cultural conservative like myself, you're basically trying to conserve a constitution that restrains government, but you can't. So you also endorse national divorce by seeking separatism before America falls, and what gets erected from the ashes is a constitutional democracy where you're not the brakes. Make sense? You have no interest in being the brakes on a train anymore if you're a cultural conservative. So the strategy ahead is to hand Americans who want to live in a constitutional democracy to it. If you're a cultural conservative like myself, You have adopted a negative freedom orientation, while there is a minority of conservatives who endorse positive freedom. Today, we're going to learn all about what that means. What is cultural conservatism really? Drop the intro.
What you know about my politics? Know about my politics.
I haven't had any lunch today, apart from this. It doesn't matter if I'm high off of 15 protein bars. Let's get into this. First things first, before we talk about ideology, we gotta establish something. We gotta establish that no ideology is complete without a stated freedom orientation. What does this mean? When someone tells you they are a specific ideology, they're not telling you anything unless they state whether or not they grow or shrink government for their ideology. This is a freedom orientation. You either endorse positive freedom or negative freedom. Let's talk about that a bit more. You can apply that to conservatism. Conservatives are supposed to conserve. They're supposed to conserve. But have you wondered why they don't? Or why conservatives in the mainstream media who sit on panels on shows like The View, they can actually sit amongst progressives and liberals and fit in a little bit too well? They agree with progressive ideas without any impetus or any desire to keep the state small. It's because some conservatives have the same freedom orientation as progressives and liberals. So they grow government in the positive together. They endorse positive freedom. Positive freedom is a freedom orientation where you aspire to freedom and autonomy by growing government in the positive. If you think of a positive freedom orientation as a blood type, it'll make sense. Because then you can take a conservative, a progressive, and a liberal who all endorse positive freedom, and this is all to mean they are compatible for the same kidney. They are compatible for the same democracy. They are compatible enough to share the same union. Together, they are most capable of turning this constitutional republic into a constitutional democracy because they grow government in the positive together. Their freedom orientation is positive freedom. It may as well be their blood type. Makes sense? Examples in reality tell me to start with the current Congress in 2024. You have a Republican or conservative majority, yet you're seeing the same agendas from the previous Democratic majority always forward, and you're wondering why. Well, knowledge is power now. Today, you know that Republican majority in Congress is peppered with conservatives that do what? They grow government in the positive. They endorse positive freedom. By name, they are conservative. By freedom orientation, they may as well be progressive. Yes, there are conservatives that exist who believe that they can grow government to conserve. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how on God's green earth someone can think that they can achieve their best life and autonomy and freedom by growing the state. I don't know. I guess it's possible. To me, it's just like asking for more freedom while asking for more paternalism. But let's just go ahead and blame everything on Edmund Burke. You know that guy? What did Edmund Burke do for you?
He died for his sins.
No, that was...
I have no idea what the hell is going on in public schools. Edmund Burke. My brain is fried after that. UK conservatism drew from his ideas. Nobody died for your sins. Burke believed that blind resistance to change was problematic, that people should have a prudent willingness to change in order to conserve. He's not wrong. I just think for me, it makes sense that you can meet society where it is because you can't conserve in the way your grandparents used to conserve. That doesn't make any sense, especially in 2024. However, the kind of conservative I am that endorses negative freedom, a shrink government, I would find that entire perspective to have so much of a slippery slope that I would just avoid the slope. Can you conserve while growing government? According to Burke, sure. Anything's possible if you just believe. I think it's possible under the condition that the government actually wants to conserve. So it's a conditional yes. The problem is governments generally want to progress to so much power that the people they govern over, they don't get to keep power for themselves. You trade liberty and freedom for safety. So the answer is that yes, government can conserve, but it won't. So that's also your answer.
Oh my God! Oh,
Conservation in 2024 requires separatism. Just my opinion. Since our reality is that there are two Americas that want two different forms of government and two different constitutions, unless there is a compelling argument that you can resist Marxist, socialist, and communist ideas while choosing integration over separatism, the answer is separatism. You can't conserve a constitutional republic if half of the country wants to live in a constitutional democracy for progress. So you use separatism as a tool and a vehicle. I think in a way that makes me a progressive conservative who endorses negative freedom. But I digress. This isn't about me. This is about cultural conservatism. So let's dig into this cake. Let's cook. Conservatism is the most modest of political ideologies, resilient for the fact that wherever progressivism uproots, a class will always arise to question if whether or not we are progressing towards the right future. It's no different than accepting that wherever there is consent, there will always be a party that resists something. Wherever progress goes, resistance follows. Do you want to progress towards a democracy where the Constitution does not restrain government? It restrains citizens for their safety. A resistant class would be your conservatives. Is your response to social injustice and police brutality defunding the police? A resistant class will follow. Conservatism is not an ideology truly fixed to a particular system of ideas per se. You don't really need subscriptions to fixed ideas if you just have growing concerns about the welfare state and the economy, which is why I can sense that, often conservatism is viewed as more of just an attitude. If you subscribe to conservatism, what truly sets you apart from the modern and classical liberal is that you have a clear understanding of what you oppose than what you favor. You know what you like, but you really know what you don't like. Yeah, that pretty much sums me up. I'm guilty. Whereas the modern liberal and classical liberal have a clear understanding of what they favor and what they oppose. Let's get deeper into that. So let's ground cultural conservatism into our reality today. This is where it gets good, you guys. I want you to come out of your history books. I want you to observe the world around you. Believe your own eyes and your own ears. Pretend like the mainstream media as a propagandist machine doesn't even exist. All that exists is you, your eyes, your ears, your senses, okay? You sense that the conservative class attempts to be the brakes on a train. You sense they want to keep the state small. Arguments can be made that they fail. Why do they fail? Since conservatism can be a posture or an attitude as well as an ideology, conservatives are reactive. They are not proactive. By nature of resisting, they respond after, not before, assault. That is when they become the most energized to mobilize. And it's also true that conservatives operate off of what they won't risk versus what they can prove. Now, if you're paying attention, you would find contradiction in those two claims. If conservatives operate off of what they won't risk, that should keep them proactive, shouldn't it? So that contradicts the claim that they are reactive. But that's the point. Operating off risk should keep conservatives proactive, but it doesn't. So they fail to conserve anything in society. God bless America. And God bless this outro.
What you know about my politics? Know about my politics.
Thanks for tuning in to my Cultural Conservative series. If you'd like to see more, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. In my next video, I'll be sure to stack cultural conservatism up against progressivism and how both of these ideologies differ on social issues like defunding the police.